Something shifted at the Canadian Grand Prix, and it wasn't just the weather or the evolving track conditions. It was the internal balance of power at Ferrari. What unfolded over the course of the weekend wasn't marked by dramatic crashes or chaotic pit stops. Instead, it was the quiet, methodical unraveling of expectations buried inside the telemetry sheets and lap data. Lewis Hamilton, the seven-time world champion, driving the same SF25 as Charles Leclerc, began carving out a subtle but undeniable gap. And while the stopwatch offered clues, the real story was being told through the data: brake points, steering inputs, throttle traces, energy recovery system deployment. It painted one conclusion: Hamilton wasn't just integrating into Ferrari, he was redefining its hierarchy. Sector by sector, the telemetry revealed a veteran driver imposing control in ways the raw lap times couldn't fully capture. And for Leclerc, the warning lights weren't just on, they were flashing red. This wasn't about settling in, it was about staking a claim. It was about legacy, about leadership, and about rewriting the rules of engagement inside one of the most iconic teams in motorsport history. What made this shift so significant wasn't the raw performance gap, but the way it manifested in free practice one. Both drivers rolled out with nearly identical setups, yet within 10 laps, patterns began to emerge. Leclerc's SF25 twitched through the rear on corner entry, particularly in turns 3 and 6, requiring early lifts and aggressive corrections. Hamilton, still acclimating to a new chassis and setup philosophy, looked unshaken. His data showed measured brake applications, smoother turn-in phases, and stable exits. Engineers noticed Hamilton's confidence in trail braking, a technique that requires absolute trust in rear stability, coming through much earlier in the weekend. Then came free practice 2, where Leclerc was pulled from the session for a precautionary inspection of his survival cell. That left Hamilton as the sole data gatherer, and what he produced turned heads. The energy recovery system profiles, sector delta times, and tire wear models showed a driver not just comfortable, but thriving. It was during this phase that Ferrari's engineers began quietly comparing sector overlays, and the results suggested a shift in driving harmony. Hamilton wasn't just matching the benchmark pace, he was shaping it. And as they began to analyze his inputs more closely, patterns began to surface that hadn't been seen in a Ferrari car since the days of Fernando Alonso or Michael Schumacher. Small efficiencies that compounded into something bigger. The quiet consistency in Hamilton's approach became the loudest statement in the paddock. As the engineers dove into the free practice 2 data post session, one thing became clear: Hamilton was extracting more performance with less strain. In the braking zones, he was consistently 3 to 4 meters later, especially into the critical 3rd and 6th corners. Normally, that level of delay increases rear instability, but Hamilton's modulation was so controlled that brake temperatures and pressures remained optimal. Through the mid-corner phase, Hamilton showed 11% less steering input variability. That figure may sound small, but in Formula One, it translates to less tire scrub, better weight transfer, and improved lap-to-lap consistency. The car was balanced under him, responding as an extension of his instincts. The bigger implication is what this means going forward. Ferrari hasn't just hired a superstar, they've imported a reference point, someone who is already reshaping the way the team approaches data interpretation, setup baselines, and driver feedback. Hamilton's presence isn't just felt in the garage, it's embedded in the technical documentation that flows through Maranello after each session. His free practice 2 sector analysis alone led to re-evaluations of energy recovery system deployment strategy for Leclerc during qualifying. And that's where the psychology shifts, because when one driver begins to define what optimal looks like, the team naturally orients around them. Leclerc isn't being pushed out, but he's being measured against a new standard. And for the first time in years, it's not one he set himself. What we're witnessing might not be a team battle. It could be a quiet transfer of leadership inside Ferrari, delivered not through politics or favoritism, but through the cold, unrelenting clarity of lap time. This isn't just about Montreal, it's about what kind of Ferrari emerges for the rest of the season. Will it be emotional edge or Hamilton's clinical precision that defines the next chapter? As race strategies evolve and technical upgrades unfold, The foundational chemistry between the drivers may become Ferrari's most pivotal variable. It's too early to declare a permanent shift in hierarchy, but the signs are there. The telemetry doesn't lie. Neither do tire temperatures, delta times, or throttle traces. What began as a data anomaly in free practice 1 evolved into a strategic pivot by qualifying 3. Hamilton isn't just fitting into the red overalls, he's filling them with authority. For Leclerc, the challenge is now clear: adapt quickly, re-establish dominance, or risk becoming the second reference point in his own team. And for Ferrari, they may have just unlocked a level of performance they've been chasing since the hybrid era began. The only question now is whether they can manage the internal dynamics without fracturing the unity that's been their strength. Because if this Canadian weekend was any indication, Ferrari's fastest car might not just be running through the streets of Montreal, but straight through their own expectations. What happens next will depend not just on upgrades or strategy, but on mindset, on who can carry the pressure of expectation and still deliver when it counts most. And right now, that pressure has a new name stitched in red. The margins are small, the stakes are high, and as the season continues, every race will offer a new clue as to who truly leads this Scuderia revival.